Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Monica Corda. I'm the Director of Business Development at the Tech Collective, and we're so pleased to have you here today for onboarding and employee engagement in a virtual environment. So certainly something we're all there, and this is going to be extremely timely material, lots of good tips. So have your pencil and pad ready to go. We are pleased to be joined by Chris Hughes and Chelsea Colaluca. Chris is a Rhode Island account executive at Bridge Technical Talent, and he's been a long-time champion of the Tech Collective. We certainly appreciate all of the work he has done. And Chelsea is the marketing and sales operation specialist at Bridge. So both of them are coming to you with they're hands-on, they're in this game all of the time. So I want to hand it over to you. I know that it is a chock-full event. And as most of you may have heard Creusa mentioned, at the very end in the chat box, I will post a one-question poll. If you would please take the time to just answer that question, it makes our programming just that much better. So thank you so much, and I will hand it over to Chris and Chelsea.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Monica. So that is who we are. So we'll go right on to the next slide. Appreciate the introduction. A little bit about Bridge. We are a technology solutions firm, and we partner with the technical community, technical experts throughout and within all industries to help folks execute their business objectives through IT solutions. Typically that runs through, and it is we are called upon to provide a rich pool of qualified candidates for both contract and permanent needs. We've been in business for over almost 20 years, servicing New England and throughout. Certainly, we partner with technical executives throughout and with all industries. Here is a demonstration of some of the folks that we currently work with and much more. So next slide, please. So since the onset, Bridge, as Monica was alluding to, Bridge has been in contact with the business community, the technical community, and we've learned a lot. We have connected and executed on well over 100 unique technical projects since COVID's onset, and we've held over 700, or getting close to 1,000 different conversations with IT executives, really getting to understand, COVID-19's impact on departmental objectives, business operations and objectives, as well as employee experiences. Some of our findings during this time were focused around infrastructure, as folks were headed from the office to work from home. Obviously, there was a large increase in need for infrastructure to get all those folks to be able to work a virtual office from home. That also saw an increase in help desk efficiency. An increase of folks working from home. There's also an increase for need for troubleshooting, as well as increased ticket loads. So that was a big portion where we saw an increase in demand. Healthcare expertise, of course, another large one. Especially earlier on, we're setting up, changing the way healthcare was delivered, setting up mobile testing facilities and triage. We have a consultant out at one of our large healthcare groups, creating that atmosphere, that virtual atmosphere out in the community for that mobile facility. And then there's also the breakdown of that too, getting folks back into the hospitals. Supply chain optimization, really key. I think, in my lifetime, I've never experienced a real supply chain stoppage until COVID. We all were part of the experience of not being able to buy or having a limited amount of toilet paper and other necessities to buy. So that really shows just how critical supply chain optimization was, how it is, how it affects our everyday life, and how we'll look at that going forward as this is our new normal. So, really interesting stuff there with supply chain. Thank you. So, some really interesting information about the work environment. And before coronavirus, 8% of full-time salaried employees would work approximately 1 day from home, and 2% were full-time. Now, this is currently the new normal, right? We're starting to get into, we're in phase 2, starting to get into phase 3, of getting back into offices and back to what was pre-COVID But we are curious, especially at this time as we're getting to phases, what percentage of your organization is working remotely currently? And I would love for the group to chime in, throw a couple of chats out there right now. That'd be great. Anybody? We've almost got a question. So we're seeing some folks, we got 80 to 90%, 100% working from remote, 100% working from remote, 100% working from remote, 80%. So I think we can see that we're still very much in the trend of most folks that can are working from home. So I do appreciate everybody chiming in there. So this slide is really about the remote workforce as from the business perspective, from the employer's perspective. So some positives. A really interesting one is geography, right? So when we're looking for talent out in the community, geography was really important when you're talking about folks going to a physical location to work. That opens up dramatically when folks are able to work remotely. So that's definitely, opens up the pool for employers. They have access to a significantly larger pool of qualified candidates to execute. And then, of course, there's a lowering of business expenses, overhead, commercial real estate, things of that nature. We have a local Providence-based fintech company that was building a couple cloud applications that were on the market. And once COVID hit, they basically shut their doors and was like, we're going to stay remote going forward because they were already all set up for that. Other challenges that are included in the virtual space with employee engagement can be weakened. Company culture can be softened a little bit with the lack of engagement. So definitely opportunities for management to be successful by adapting new ways to engage with your employees. And Chelsea's going to go a little more into that, but brainstorming innovation are also another piece that we'll hear executives saying that they are missing out on. We have one client who was not really set up to go virtual when they had to, and through that, one of the biggest things that they talked about missing was brainstorming, innovation, teamwork, and whiteboarding. Whiteboarding was a key piece, especially in the development fields. So they had to find a new whiteboarding product. They tried a couple of different vendors until they found one that worked for their team, got consensus, and now they use that going forward. And it's really been a solution and innovation that helped their group to stay virtual. So just a few things, food for thought. Another aspect of the, looking at the employers themselves, up to 20% of new hires resign within the first 45 days. So that's a pretty large and significant amount of folks and efforts that don't bear any fruit. So, certainly tightening that, having communication and a lot of one-on-one time, which you're going to hear more about with management, is key. The average new hire has approximately 45 new activities to complete during their onboarding experience. So that goes from anything from filling out I-9s, going through computer labs, getting your usernames, passwords, testing, making changes, getting access to the different applications they'll be utilizing, safety, workarounds, and all types of trainings that are necessary for these folks. So just something to keep an eye on, as you're really going to want to get a return and be really prompt with that one. So thank you. Next slide.
All right, so how do we reduce that 20% of resignation and really make a positive experience and first impression for our new hires? So the number one thing is straight from the horse's mouth. It is the one-on-one time with direct managers that is most critical for new hires during their onboarding process or their first 30 days. So we really want to ensure that you have scheduled time between the new hire and the direct manager throughout that 30 days, and most often quite beyond. In the virtual environment, one thing that is missed is kind of that full purview of what the organization's management and leadership looks like. So as you're setting up these one-on-one meetings, you may also want to consider other departmental managers that this new hire may work in tandem with. That way they can really get a view of the organization at large, which they would have gotten if they were coming into the office and kind of meeting and greeting in the way we were once used to. So the next two are examples from our clients where they actually identified the biggest pain point and then improved upon that experience for their new hires. Our first client was originally when a new hire came aboard, they would send them their laptop and equipment. Once received, that new hire would call into the IT team and go through that initial setup. We've all done the login passwords, the dual authentication, getting the software on that you may need. It has some troubleshooting, and with a help desk team that was being inundated in tickets, they were finding it was taking maybe 2 to 3 days to actually get their new hire up and running and going through their training. So instead, they kind of streamlined this process. They secluded the second floor of their organization just for new hires. So their first day, the new hire would go to the organization, and one perk is they were able to see the facility that they may one day actually have office space within. And that new hire would go to the second floor. They would do all their any final documentation and computer setup right there on site, safely pertaining to the regulations of COVID-19. And from there, their second day on the clock, they were able to dive in, start their training, and really could start working for the organization. Our second client, they advocated for another method to improve upon this equipment troubleshooting pain point of the new hire experience. So they've experienced what many organizations did at the onset of COVID-19. They didn't have enough laptops to supply all their employees in the transition to the virtual environment. So what they did is with their new hires, they had them utilize their own equipment. And then their help desk or their IT team train the new hires how to save their day's work as an instance on the AWS cloud platform. So that way it was separate from their personal documents within their laptop. And one thing I'd really like to stress here is this client was actually in the finance and banking space. So they were able to execute this in one of the highest regulated areas security-wise. So a really good example of innovation in this new virtual environment. And the last one is really the prioritization of responsiveness. I mean, this is always essential in onboarding, but where you have multiple players, you have the hiring manager, you have HR, the new hire themselves, and in some cases, an agency like ourselves, all working for the common goal. You want to ensure each day it's clear what was accomplished, what's expected, and what's next. So having a point person to lead that communication really makes it streamless and gives the new hire a good first impression. So while this all pertains to new to the organization, we also wanted to focus on how can we engage employees who have been with us for a while. We all know people who have been furloughed. We may be seeing that in our own organization. So how can we really keep people motivated in this time of uncertainty? And what we're finding is one key item is communication. We're still seeing a lot of, as the chat told us, 100% virtual, 90%, 80%, but we are going to begin seeing a mixed workforce where some people are on site in satellite locations, some people are virtual, some people may go in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then stay home Tuesday, Thursday. It's really going to be a mix. So when you have this element, one thing that is a challenge is that some employees may be more informed than others. And that's what we really want to minimize through regular communication. In the virtual environment, it's everything is handwritten. You're missing that in-office dialogue, those stand-ups. So you really want to get on a clear schedule of email communication, ensuring everyone is involved. So also, as you kind of migrate into the office space, when there is in-office dialogue, distance stand-up, so to speak, you want to ensure that that information is then relayed back to the virtual audience. And while some employees might feel like they're getting information overload from their company, that is less of a problem than other employees feeling like they're disconnected and they're not receiving the information and a little on an island as their company moves along. So one recommendation, now this is weekly communication, and we're thinking here direct management to their team, their direct reports. And this would be kind of a simple, easy layout to do. So it's two objectives for your team specifically. So maybe what you achieved that week and what your goal is for next week. 2 organizational updates. So this could be any health screening information, as well as maybe revenue, systems generation, any type of things that connects to the organization at large. And the last one being 2 employee experience highlights. And we're going to dive into that in our next slide, but that would be about, what are survey results indicating, what social items we have coming up on the calendar, and so forth. So it wouldn't be employee engagement without surveys, but I'm going to kind of tailor this to an example that I think is really well executed within this virtual space. Number one thing, you want to keep your surveys anonymous. That makes for genuine feedback and people that feeling that they can really voice what they're experiencing. So one of our clients used surveys at a weekly glance, and they sent it out to everyone within their organization, and the survey respondent did have to say what department they were in. And they were inquiring specifically about the number of virtual meetings that were taking place and the quality of those meetings. So asking questions like, how many meetings did you have this week? Scaling the productiveness of those meetings. Could it have been shorter? Did it need to be longer? And then also asking, were there clear action items at the end of each meeting, as well as leaving always a section for open feedback where people can kind of voice how they think things could be improved or other items that they're struggling with that the survey might not have addressed. Now you want to have kind of one point of contact that really goes in and analyzes these results. And in this scenario, it was essential that that person also had access to departmental calendars so they can take the feedback and compare and then make recommendations for the following week, month to those managers based on the feedback. And one thing you want to do to tie it back to that communication, as you're getting survey results, you want to share what you're hearing and what you're doing based on those results with the rest of the employees. That way, your colleagues can kind of see, okay, they hear me. If I keep engaging, I will benefit in the long run. So while engagement is great, it really doesn't come out of nowhere, and it takes leadership to really advocate for this culture and people to take place in surveys and read these communications. One terminology I'm really enjoying in my reading is that from the onset of the pandemic, the CEO has really had to become the chief empathy officer, and they need to create a culture that's open to discussion. They're not ignoring that things are different, and they genuinely want to hear your impact and how they can improve despite all these unknowns. For larger organizations, I think a great example of how to kind of make that connection and feel that leadership advocacy is through virtual 15-minute coffee meetings via Zoom with leadership team members, whether it's a CEO, COO, and so forth. And one thing I like here is organizations that are taking these coffee meetings and they're inviting maybe 10 people from different departments within the organization. So someone from IT, someone from HR, someone from finance and marketing, and having them all sit together during this coffee meeting with leadership. That way, despite being in a virtual environment, you're not so siloed just to your department, and you are getting a purview of the full organization and its culture and mission at large. There's been a lot of positives despite these big changes and the onset of this pandemic has brought. But overall, employees are actually feeling like their management trusts them. They're feeling a lot of autonomy with their work and feeling that their management trusts them to execute and do it well. And everyone knows that that autonomy is very well linked to employee satisfaction and retention. So that is a great win. And we're also seeing large survey entities showcasing that since the pandemic's onset, those that engaged in these techniques through surveys and communication, leadership advocacy, they're actually seeing that their employees feel that their employee experience has greatly increased. So in the spirit of good news, another item is how do we keep the culture in this virtual environment? Before this pandemic, we would see many cases our employees more than our families, and we had that chatter and that team building and that friendship. Here at Bridge, we do social convergences. We do them every week, and we select a topic to discuss. That way we can round robin. Everyone knows when it's their chance to speak. We've done some fun ones. We've done first car, 2 truths and a lie, your most embarrassing childhood and teenage photos. So we're still getting to know each other and sharing some laughs. Other people are just going casual, doing a virtual happy hour. There's the wellness challenges, tracking Fitbit steps. I really like this example because you can, through the Fitbit app, get a leaderboard of everyone participating and take that and put that right into your employee communication as kind of a shout out to the employees that are participating, and to kind of generate that feedback loop and engagement. Other methods, we're all on Teams or Slack, dedicating a channel that's just for casual conversation. So maybe it's food puns and memes or movie show suggestions. So kind of getting that more casual connection. And one tip as we do this, set an end time when you're planning these convergences or happy hours. That kind of eliminates that awkward, is it time to go? And really kind of creates a great experience for all. So would love to see if anyone has any suggestions, things that their organization has done, if you could drop it in the chat, or things that you would like to do, any kind of brainstorming ideas there. Chris will be on the lookout.
Yeah, I'm looking out for some examples now. Thank you for that tip, Chelsea. It was really, setting an end time is really key. Because you're to be there, but having an end certainly makes it much more comfortable for everybody.
Well, I will pass the torch your way, Chris.
Yeah, no, for sure. So thank you. We've got a few comments here. Yeah. So there's definitely some, health check apps out there, different things that people are doing. Yeah. We as well. Bridge definitely likes to keep things very fun. So, those topics are really just to bring out some creativeness in the group. And we all do have fun sharing really silly pitches. I don't know why almost nobody is really proud of their middle school pitches. I don't know why. But I want to talk just a little bit, about Agile and how organizations are excelling during this time using an Agile methodology. And some of the points here is that Agile was really, in its development, the methodology itself really was fitting for groups to be able to work in a continuous loop, but also not necessarily have to be in a physical space. So adoption of tools, using digital tools such as Slack, as we mentioned, GitHub for developers, Teams, WebEx, Zoom. We've all become, have a better understanding of the virtual environment. Within an Agile environment, daily stand-ups are still something that's very common, as well as weekly and biweekly sprints. The product owners become much more integral to the products themselves and how they're developed, and continuous feedback. One of the key ingredients to Agile is just that. It's continuous feedback. It's a continuous loop of production, development, implementation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the feedback that comes back is critical to the team in real time. Teams that weren't ready for that kind of feedback, such as the example I have in the middle here, one of our healthcare clients, they were having trouble in the deployment phase of their software before the pandemic. So now with an Agile methodology, it's really showcased some problems within the organization, and they are not able to move forward. So they've got some big problems that they need to work on, and we're doing our best to help them through that. And we have another healthcare payer, a large healthcare payer here in the state that's transitioning to the cloud. It's a big implementation on their part, very very aggressive. But they're implementing Agile projects and transitioning from a traditional waterfall shop to an Agile shop, and none of that would be possible without implementing Agile methodologies. I do see another comment. I just wanted to go before we go into the summary. Yeah, so we'll answer these questions right after the summary. We've got one more slide, so thank you.
All right, so to kind of summarize our highlights throughout the presentation, number one thing for our new hires, that would be that one-on-one time with their managers. When looking at that onboarding experience, take a walk in their shoes. What's most frustrating? Concentrate on fixing that. Don't worry about fixing a lot of things, just a little bit. Take the leap and hit the pain point. Leadership should be encouraging open feedback. That's really on them to set this culture that then kind of moves on on to being more engaged. Surveys are becoming a necessity in improving the virtual environment. I didn't note it earlier, but in my career, I have had extensive experience developing, analyzing, and implementing surveys for small and large scale organizations. So if you have any questions on what vendors to use, what kind of questions to utilize, how to distribute, I would be happy to discuss further with you offline. So feel free to connect. And lastly, that these agile organizations conducting their sprints, it's really enhancing productivity within this new environment. All right.
So yeah, so to summarize, that is our presentation. We'll talk a little bit about onboarding and employee engagement in a virtual environment. We're all living it. Very like we said earlier, this is very timely. We're all learning from each other too. Like I was alluding to very early on in the presentation, we've compiled all this information from working from different organizations, different industries, compiling all the ways that they like to work, what they're doing, what has worked, what hasn't, what they're going to do. Higher education is a really great example. Rhode Island's known for higher education. Those folks, they all have a different plan of how they're going to get students back into brick and mortar schools. Some are voluntary, some are going to be half and half, some online. So it really has been unique, and sharing those stories in between, there's no two that are the same. So it really is interesting. It's about leadership, it's about management, and it's about the employers themselves. I wanted to answer a question that's out there. I thought this was pretty interesting. This comes from, I'm not really exactly sure, Hermine Harborn. I apologize if I'm not saying that correctly, but one of the questions that they're asking is, what's your experience with, fault lines, us versus them mentality? How do you prevent the formations of subgroups? Which I think that's really interesting in an organization our size. We don't necessarily see something like that, but in organizations, larger organizations, that is definitely, I think that goes in line really with employee engagement. It's really about that one-on-one time with that manager, having that communication. Are you having an understanding of where the employee is at? The empathy officer is a really good example. Do you understand what this person is going through? Do you understand their home life? Home life is not the same as the office life, and that's a dramatic change in a paradigm that we're all going through.
And I think I can kind of add to that. One easy way to kind of take that us versus them is adding that conversation where management is consistently saying, take time for your mental health. And just giving that simple message of, if you need to take a walk on lunch, if you need a minute, please come to me. I understand. And that's, opening that door is a great way to kind of feel like, okay, I have a friend in this, or, my employer respects me in this.
All right. Any other questions, comments, feedback? Who do you most often see being the point person regarding dispersing and analyzing team surveys and their role in the company? Yeah, great one. I'll let Chelsea get that one, because that's definitely her department.
So in terms of survey analysis, a lot of larger organizations usually dedicate someone within HR to kind of pull that all together and then disperse directly to the respected departments based on their findings. What's really key here is that the respected departments are then giving that information to their employees, so the trickle down of the flow. But in smaller organizations, you might have, we're a group of about 15 here at Bridge. You might have the office manager kind of pulling that in and analyzing from there. So it's kind of all to scale. All right.
Yeah, definitely key leadership one-on-one. And we touched on this a little bit, but one last thing, you have that one-on-one person. Well, that one-on-one person is very, very important. What happens if that person is no longer available? So you do need to have a secondary backup. Redundancy. Anybody who's in development or anybody who's in power IT will understand redundancy quite well.
Well, thank you all for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
Y'all got something out of it.
Yeah. From the Tech
Yeah.
Collective, thank you to Bridge Technical Talent, Chelsea and Chris for providing this information to us. Certainly some great ideas to hold on to and some really good ideas in the chat. I would love to know where the person who got breakfast ordered for their team, where they work. I'll have to check them out more closely.
I love that.
That was a wonderful idea. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Tech Collective, we are the IT Industry Association for the state of Rhode Island. So I did put our website, but tomorrow we have a data ethics in COVID-19 presentation. And next week we are chock full. There's an open source group, a WordPress presentation. There's a lean coffee for those of you in Agile, as well as a project management class. So please join us for those, and please take a moment just to fill out that one question in the survey. We would very much appreciate it. So thank you all very much, and thank you to Creosa who organized this and all of the programs that you see here. So we're a very small team at the Tech Collective, but it's a good group, and we really aim to give you the information that you need. So have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks, all.
Thank you.
Hogan, what are you doing out there?